Hey, what is up guys? Guitar here, welcome back to another Brave 9 video. Alright, in the last video we did check out the top 10 most used warriors in the Korean server right now, like pretty recently about last week's arena rankings. So now let's check out the defenders, magicians and supporters. Alright, so we're gonna clump all those categories into one video right here. So let's dive into it. Alright, so first things that we're going to notice, we're going to focus on the defenders first. Alright, for very obvious reasons, Lucius. Lucius is going to be number one, whether you like it or not, because across all the tier arena leagues and stuff, he's the best defender out there in terms of budget wise. You don't really need any skill books to make him work. He can be used to protect a lane against strong warriors. Alright, so it's impossible to one-shot a Lucius unless you have a hyper buff Christina. Most of the time it's going to take more than one hits. So therefore, having Lucius is pretty crucial in certain setups, but of course, he's not like completely needed. I've seen setups without Lucius that can do very well. But Lucius plus 10 is also a thing right now. If you climb higher, because the Death Guard count increased, it's going to make it much more annoying to deal with and deal against. Alright, number two, obviously we have Grand Hill there. So this is something that we have seen it coming quite often. So Gran is one of the best 6 devils in my opinion. Alright? So calm down. I know not everyone is a fan of her. In fact, most players hate her. I understand that. Alright, so here's the thing. Gran still really strong at solid second place. Obviously, she is no Lucius. And most of the time, if you have Rafitia, alright, if you have Rafitia already in your supporters lineup, in your arena formation, having Gran is going to give you, like, it's probably the best next thing that you can invest in, because number one, a +3 Gran is going to work very well with Rafitia. Number two, she's very solid option to deal with lots of warriors and perhaps most of the mages in the game, like except for Livia. If you look at the mage meta, which we will cover later on, the only mage that perhaps can consistently one-shot her easily is Livia. Alright, she does not struggle against a lot of units, and in terms of the warrior meta, especially with certain combo, certain supporters pairing her up, you know, she can be really hard to deal with and can be very hard to get rid of. So having Gran, like, there's just plenty of battles where Gran can just solo the entire match for you. And if you have been in that scenario before, whether you are on whether Gran is on your own team or on the opposing team, yeah, you should have at least seen one or two of that clips. Alright, so next up at number 3, we have Glacia. Now Glacia is a really solid option for lots of players. She can deal with Adin, she can deal with Livia, which Gran sometimes struggles with. So I feel like Glacia is a good complement with a few of the other tanks right now. Yeah, I would say she's pretty much a crucial component of another side counter. Like if you need more taunts than just a Grand Hilde in your team, having Glacia is a big plus. And especially for those of you who do not have Grand Hilde, having Glacia in your team is pretty crucial. Alright, so most of the time, taunt is just insane. Alright, having the ability to redirect attacks away. So Glacia will give you the ability to do so if you do not have Grand Hill there. So even if you have Lucius, he will not be able to do anything in terms of redirecting attacks away. So you need Grand Hill there or Glacia. So I can see that, yep, she is at number 3. So Glacia does need the investment, unfortunately. So this is where it kind of weighs in, right? So Grand Hill there versus Glacia. Who do you pick first if you are new to the game? I would say if you are new, maybe Gran might work better because she's gonna be decent at +3 if you do have a Rafitia, of course. But whereas Glacia, you will really need her to be at +15, and that's a big problem and a real struggle for most players, having to +15 a unit. Like most of the time, we all struggle with soul gears, especially completely. It turns off a lot of players. I can see from that perspective that some players might not really want to invest in Glacia, but obviously once you have her at +15, she is really strong. Alright, so again, Glacia is either +15 or you just don't build her at all, because plus 14 and below is just not worth using in my opinion. Alright, number 4, Benshina. Alright, so Benshina is still in the meta, surprisingly. I am honestly surprised that she is in the top 5, because there's plenty of other defenders. I mean, not plenty, but lots of other options that Korea has. And yeah, she is a really solid choice. If you look at the top 5 list right here, I feel like Benshina is perhaps consistent defender in terms of her output damage. Alright, so what do I mean by that? She is really strong. Alright, you just need you don't really need plenty of graves for her to be really strong. You just need like 3 to 4 graves, which is a good moderate enough amount for her to deal decent damage. Obviously, if you have like 10 graves, that's when you will see insane damage coming out from her. I've seen Benshina one-shotting a Grand Hill there multiple times. Like, it's just insane. Alright, so she's a very good counter to Grand. And at number 4, she's still a solid choice at 35% usage rate. It's just insane. She's very situational, I would say, compared to the others. Her taunt is very unique. It's very unique to her own. Alright, so you just need to form a graveyard on the enemy's team, and therefore you will have her taunt activated. So that's not something that you can easily achieve in a defensive formation. So I can say that, which is why we have something else at number 5, which is Blacklist, which is going to work much better perhaps than Benshina in defensive formation. Now, if you are going to attack, right, the enemy team, most of the time, if you have a good initiator like Lyudmila, Christina, for sure you know you're going to be able to form one graveyard. You're going to be able to get rid of at least one enemy. Benshina is just a solid choice. Alright, so number 5, Blacklist. So for obvious reasons, in defensive teams, Blacklist can help redirect attacks away from your main team or from your main taunter, so depending on how it works. So most of the time, if you are building a defense formation in PvP, Blacklist, like I would say, maybe 80% of the time, good defensive formations will need a Blacklist. Like, she's just a solid choice. Her taunt cannot be pillaged, cannot be removed, because it's like a status kind of thing, similar to, I would say similar to Benshina in a way, but then again it's slightly different as well. So yeah, still very unique. I'm quite surprised she's at number 5. Alright, so considering that she was shortly released, if I'm not mistaken, back then when Seer was meta, she was like shortly released right after Seer, if I'm not mistaken, like 1 or 2 months after that. And yeah, to see her last this long into the Korea meta from even in top 5, wow, we're not talking about top 10, top 5, like that's just insane. 7%, 7.6% usage rate. Alright, so let's move on to the Magicians. Alright, so we have a couple of new faces here. So obviously, number 1, we all know who this is, right? Nartus at 71% usage rate. But you can clearly tell that the Nartus usage rate has dipped by 7% over the course of 1 week. No idea what happened right there. Most players just decide to ditch Nartus maybe for number 2. Alright, so we're going to talk about that for a while. But Nartus, still a very solid choice. I don't think Nartus will go out of meta, as long as Nartus has 2 things. Number 1, he has the ability to attack the cast radius state at plus 12 to be able to constantly attack every single round. And number 2, the taunt ignore. As long as Nartus has these 2 abilities, of course coupled with his 100% defense and stuff, I think he's gonna always be relevant in the meta. But obviously, he has plenty of counters right now. It's hard to not say that he is bad in most formations, but then again, his impact. So here's the thing: most players pick Nartus from the Jumpstart quest, and I can get it. I get it, right? So he has insane range, but the meta has shifted since then. And if I were to tell players right now who should you pick from Jumpstart quest, back then I would recommend, alright, you either go for Nartus or you go for Raphithia, like 50-50. I would say I would rate between these 2 units like 50-50. But right now, if you ask me today, who should you pick from Jumpstart quest, I would say Raphithia, 100%. There's no debate, 50-50. Do not pick Nartus. I don't think he is that strong anymore. Now, I'm not saying that he's useless, he's worthless. He's not, alright? He is still very strong in the meta for the time being, but it's just a matter of time for him to drop. Now, I do think that Natus is still a very solid unit in outside of PvP, right? For example, Guild Wars, that tonic gnaw, that range. Imagine able to burst out the enemy's entire lane. It doesn't matter what they put or what kind of taunter they try to use. I feel like if you have Natus, you don't have to think much. In Guild Wars, it's just going to be so easy, right? But in PvP, that's when your luck is going to be dependent on what's the opponents that you're facing. If they are Beliaf teams, or there's Grand Hildir on the enemy team, or there's a Lyudmila, there's a chance that your Natus will die before he is able to do anything. So yeah, the ability to constantly cast your spell just like a warrior should from round 2 onwards might not seem that appealing anymore, considering that quite a number of units counter him right now. Okay, so moving on, moving on at number 2, we have Helga. So this is the new acquired magician in the Korea server, specifically unique to them. Within the first week, she has climbed to number 2. Insane. Alright, if you guys have not checked out the skills, I will have it linked in the description below. So Helga, she has lots of interesting stuff going for her. She has increase in stats whenever she dies, and she has buff prohibition for the enemy when she dies. It's just insane. Alright, so she does a lot of things for the team, but I feel like she needs like a specific formation to work, and most of the time it's a gamble because you have to force the enemy to hit her, and she might actually be better in a defense formation than in an attacking formation. I'm not sure. There might be some things that you can use, right? Perhaps you can, if in your attacking formation you can do something like a Benshina, and then right next to Benshina there's a Helga. That could be a thing that players could try to abuse. But other than that, Helga at number 2. I'm glad to see a new magician that is not Natus, Livia or whatever being at this spot. Like, it's just refreshing to see that the developers have finally came up with something like this comparable to Natus. And maybe in the long run, Helga might actually beat Natus in terms of the usage rate. We'll never know, because right now it's only 1 week, right? So it's just going to be a matter of time. Number 3, Livia, obvious reasons. She's still one of the best mage in the game right now. Doesn't need investment at all. She can deal with Grand Hildir at +0. You just need her at +0. You don't really need support buffs. You don't need runes. It's just insane. Alright, fixed damage is something that most players can look forward to. So definitely she's still locked behind the gacha octo system, so you can't just recruit her with ancient coins or whatever. But yeah, very solid choice still, number 3. But to see her, like, the difference between her usage rate and Natus is like so huge. 71%, and then she's like at 17%. Like, wow, that's just huge, right? Alright, number 4, Frisha. Okay, so I'm glad to see again another new magician to make it to this spot. But at 7% usage rate, that tells that she might not be that strong, or she doesn't fit in much formations. Alright, so I do hope that maybe once Frisha comes over to the rest of the servers, her usage rate is going to be higher, because I do think she's pretty solid. She's quite a solid choice, and I can see that most players that have invested in the warriors, like, or prefer to invest in warriors like Ventana, etc., they are going to prefer to favor them as opposed to Frisha. And of course, Frisha, if I'm not mistaken, in the Korea server, she was released alongside Yuri, and I can see that most players would prefer to invest their resources into Yuri rather than Frisha. Alright, so that's something that I can understand. Alright, number 5, Velfron, makes sense. He's still a solid unit, but you're gonna need skill books and skill level on him. Like, Velfron is not something that's usable at +0, unlike Livia. So I feel like it makes sense for Livia to be like in a higher usage rate compared to Velfron, but at about 6.4%, so that shows that plenty of players are still using him. So the reason why some players are still using him is not because lots of players have invested in +10 Velfron before the 6 levels came. So especially in Korea, and even in my server, in Asia server, and I'm sure that's the same thing in America and EU as well, you might see plus 10 Valfrons here and there. So most players who have already plus 10 them did not transfer their skills away. So for those few players, they still decide to use Valfron, and that's fine. Valfron is gonna be pretty situational. The reason why he has dropped so far below is because of the inconsistency of the damage that he can deal. While he is good on having fixed damage to deal with 100% defense warriors, most of the time he'll be stuck at taunters, right? Unless if Valfron has a taunt ignore, then that's going to be a whole different thing. But for now, Valfron is just gonna start hitting that particular Glacier or even Grand Hildir or that Banshee even. Okay, and finally, let's move on to supporters. So this is something that you can clearly tell. It's being completely dominated by one single unit, none other than Raphithia at 96%. 96, like what? That is insane. 96% usage rate. Alright, so this shows that almost every single account out there in Korea server has her. Alright, which is insane. If you do not have Raphithia, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, you're just going to struggle in lots of things, in a lot of contents, not just PvP specifically, maybe in co-op raids even, or in Guild Wars, etc. It's just way harder to set up your formation. Like having Raphithia gives you a ton of flexibility. Like it's just bizarre, it's insane. Yeah, 96%, it makes sense, right? Like she is just a must. So till this day, there's still no supporter that can compete with Raphithia, which I am quite surprised, honestly. So hopefully one day we will see that like coming soon, but for now, yeah, no other supporters can compete with Raphithia. So at number 2, we have none other than Albion. So Albion usage rate at 17.4%, which is pretty decent. Like he's gonna be able to combo with lots of units, and he's pretty much crucial if you want to get extremely high score in one of the world boss Gorgona. So ideally Albion, yep, I would say he deserves this spot, right? He deserves the second place, either second or third. I'm quite surprised that he's at second place as opposed to third, because I feel like Beliaf might be more flexible than an Albion. But then again, Beliaf at number 3, 11.8%. Alright, so Beliaf, extremely solid unit for sure. Right now in the meta, it favors her a ton, especially when every single warrior out there has 100% defense. So it's just so hard to deal against them. So having Beliaf in your formation can give you like pretty much a ton of flexibility. You can deal, your skeletons can deal with Adin, Angelica, etc. You don't have to worry much of a lot of things, right? So don't have to worry much about their BS. Beliaf is weak against mages, alright? So Valfron can clear skeletons pretty well. So to see that Valfron is right now like deep down below, so definitely Beliaf to climb up, it makes sense, right? So as long as there are not much mages around, yeah, she's always going to shine for sure, and that's her only weakness. Most of the time, mages or some other warriors, it doesn't have to be mage, but it can be a warrior with huge range, usually can clear up her skeletons pretty easily. But right now she is at 11.8%, and I don't think that she deserves that spot. So moving on to number 4, we have Michaela. Alright, so Beliaf and Michaela, they are both pretty close, so it's kind of a thing. Beliaf is actually a pretty budget option as well for an Octo. If you're looking to build her, she ideally needs +3, you don't really need anything above that. +5, you get additional support buffs, which is pretty cool, but I don't think you really need up to +10 or anything crazy like that. But Michaela on the other hand, you will need at least +13. You will need the immunities. +14 and +15, you get incredible amount of stats enhancement, of course, which is what you want ideally. Irremovable buffs, something that you can't like argue against something like Beliaf or Raphithia, which can be nullified. So she still is, you know, one of the much more reliable supporter that players can look towards to. Of course, I feel like she's much more on the expensive side, but then again, she is a good option. Alright, if you are looking to build one supporter which is not legendary right now to give a decent buff, hey, go for Michaela. Like, I feel like, yeah, she's not a bad option to use. Alright, and number 5, we have Asmode. So this is something that I'm quite surprised to see Asmode still on the list. I do think that Asmode he's up and down, alright? Like, he is really up and down, climbing and going down and climbing again and dropping in ranks. But usage rate is fluctuating a lot. You can clearly tell 6.4% usage rate, which is pretty moderate. He's about similar with Velfern. There are some players, they are still using him. Some players have decided to opt out from using him. Alright, he dies to a lot of things. And with all the 100% defense warrior right now in the meta, I can see Asmode struggling. But if you look carefully in terms of his usage, he's still useful in a lot of other game modes. Maybe in Guild Wars, Co-op Raid, Evil Castle, etc. Asmode is definitely solid there. But of course, right here where he is in PvP, he's a very niche unit. Obviously, if you want him to work well, you need plus 10. Alright, so you really need plus 10. Because most players is going to use Asmode to try to one-shot enemy supporters. I would say that's the crucial part of trying to destroy the enemy's team, because most of the formations that I fight, they try to place high defense units. Alright, so Raphithia, Belial, and Michaela are the best options. So Asmode at below plus 10, for example plus 6, sometimes can struggle to deal with those other units consistently. So yeah, definitely Asmode plus 10. I would say he still deserves some sort of spot for sure in some formations, and he can deal a lot of damage. He can deal with a lot of units that you don't have to worry much, but at the same time he does get countered a lot as well. So yeah, I feel like at the 5th place he's pretty balanced. He deserves this spot. I do think 6.4% is about right. Okay, so with that being said, I'm gonna end the video here. Thanks a lot for watching, and let me know what you guys think of the top 5 most picked units of the defenders, magicians, and supporters currently in the Korea server. Like, do you guys expect to see someone else in this list that perhaps that's not listed here? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a discussion below on what other units that are actually viable in our current PvP meta right now that are not right here in this top 5. Okay, so as always, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, give this video a like. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day. Goodbye.